Welcome, Thomas.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me. Since my Italian is not as good as my German or English, you have to bear with me in English language. So, AI in banking. Just about 2 years ago, we were all surprised by Sam Altman and his team on what I call the killer app on AI. AI has been here since more than 40 years, and in banking industry, we have been exploring artificial intelligence since, almost 40 years. But with the killer app that Sam Altman brought out, all of us, whether in private lives or in corporate lives, we have started to incorporate it into our daily lives. Now, I want to take you a little bit onto a journey on how we explore this in the financial services industry. And for that, I want you to put yourself into my shoes for a moment. So, think about it. You're standing at the edge of a new frontier. The light is shimmering, or the air is buzzing like electric air with huge potential, or the horizon is shimmering with a huge amount of potential. Now you're standing at this edge, and you're thinking of yourself, how do I explore this world? How do I find the right opportunities that are in there? How do I navigate? And how do I make sure that I get this exploration considering all the risk aspects, the cybersecurity aspects, the compliance and legal aspects that I need to obey on? So today, I want to take you a little bit on this journey and make sure you understand what it takes to implement AI in the financial services industry. I take this from our own wisdom, from our own experience on the financial services industry within EFG, but I also want to make sure that I bring along what others have done in this industry in this part. So let's start with the opportunities, the exciting part. What you can see here is a bunch of opportunities in the banking industry. As you can see, they are front to back. When I started to explore this within EFG, I pretty much had a bunch of people coming to me and said, yeah, we can do this and that. Compliance came with a lot of use cases, risk, of course, also the front. When I started to cluster this in different buckets, I realized there are 3 themes that are key. Theme number 1, employee productivity. And I'll deep dive into that, which is sort of a vertical stream. Theme number 2 is what I call horizontal. It's process innovation, it's process simplicity, it's operational efficiency. And then we've got theme number 3, which is product innovation, probably the hardest part, and we probably have to leave that aside for a moment. So let's delve into the employee productivity for a while. While in the digital age, employee productivity has been a gradual increase. In AI, this is not the case. It is not linear. Why do I say this? I'll give you an example. In the digital age, when we just implement digital capabilities, let's just take automatic fill out of forms. It was regardless whether it was for an employee that was super engaged and super experienced, or whether it was for a high complexity job or a low complexity job. This is not the case with AI. I'll give you an example. So let's take Nicole. She's very new at the bank, and she started at the help desk. Give her AI, and it will help her a bunch. She will immediately be able to answer most or even all the questions that are coming in. Fantastic. Now let's walk 3 desks further. We go to Laurent. Laurent is with the bank since 5 years. He knows every question inside out. He has this absolute experience. AI will will not help him. As a matter of fact, the model was probably trained by his answers of the calls. So here you can see low complexity job, combine it with low experience, it will help you a bunch. Now let's go to the next department. Let's take legal. We have a lot of legal guys in banking. Give it to an experienced legal person and AI will help them a lot. It will boost their productivity because they know exactly what good looks like. So they can differentiate good output from bad output. Again, give it to a person that is not experienced, that just started on the job. They cannot differentiate. So you probably ask yourself, do we now only give AI to those that really need it or can profit from it? Of course not. We'll give it to everybody. But we have to have the lessons learned that there are certain elements where what I call the productivity zones, where AI will help in the organization. So combine high complexity job with a huge amount of experience, the productivity zone. Combine low experience with low complexity, the productivity zones. That's, I would say, lessons learned number one. What else do we need? Of course, first we need board engagement and board endorsement. That is absolutely key. So let's start with ensuring that the board backs you up, and then of course come with a vision, with a mandate, with objectives. These objectives need to be crystal clear and they need to be broken down. They need to be measurable. Absolutely spot on. Here I'll give you an example and you see 4 different objectives blocks. And you will realize that I've captured them again in my 3 buckets. Why are they 4? Because objective number 1 and 2 are productivity objectives, employee productivity objectives. One is just for front business. I call this offense. Number 2 is for defense. Number 3 is then for operational efficiency, process enhancements. And then number 4 for the product innovation. But let's make sure you start small. You start learning fast, adopting fast, also failing fast. That's very important. I'll give you a couple of examples. What else do we need in order to ensure that we have the right building blocks in place? It is not done with just implementing or installing a piece of software and then just running. Forget it, not possible. So number 1, we have to start with the use cases. Always start with the client. So what do we want to achieve? Coming back to our objectives, what do we want to achieve? What are the use cases where we can create value? So in EFG, we collected so far 35 use cases, and probably every day there's another use case coming along, so there's a lot of ideas which we're starting to implement, and we clustered them. I love 2-dimensional clusters. So I clustered them amongst impact on the y-axis, on the x-axis, I call them the effort that it takes to implement them. Because with that, I can differentiate for those that have a fast impact, quick wins, and probably those that take a little bit longer but have a deeper impact, more value being created. So that's the use cases. And we collect those use cases front to back. We make sure that, again, we put OKRs, objectives, and key results against those use cases and start to implement them. Next part, data. Data is absolutely key. AI, the AI models are data silos. They are creatures who demand large amount of data. So we capture all sorts of data. We have to gather them for all the systems. KYC, know your client data from the compliance department, from the product innovation department. Yes, we need that. From the core banking system, yes, we need that. We all combine it. But let's be careful. Ideally, the data is structured in a way. Of course, AI today can also use unstructured data and help you to structure it. So we can also use emails and other unstructured type of data, which is fantastic, but be careful. To structure unstructured data, it's expensive. So you cannot prevent not to have a proper data management, data governance in place without going into AI. So data management and data capturing is absolutely fundamental. You have to do that job right before going into AI. And then, of course, the piece of technology that everyone thinks when talking about AI, we just install a piece of technology, we just install a model, and then that's it. That's obviously a key element. Here again, you have to think hard how you do that. And depending on the size of your company, how you approach it. At EFG, when I started, we didn't have any data scientists. We didn't have any skill set within the bank. On the previous company, which was a little bit bigger, that was all there. So there we could go to hyperscalers. Is it AWS? Is it Google? Is it Microsoft? In smaller companies like Unique and other financial institutions like private banks, you probably have to start with solution providers that are sitting in between the large hyperscalers, which provide you with a platform, and you have to do it yourself, and yourself. So if you go with a solution provider, we've done that with a company called Unique. You're much faster, you have an enabler that has done this before, and you don't follow into potential traps where you have to gain a lot of experience. That's about the technology. The next part is about process and governance. You need to put in place a governance structure in two ways. Number one, implementing the use cases. It is not you that decides which use cases should be implemented first. It should be your customers. And therefore, you need to have a governance in place where your customers are represented. And of course, you need to do the checks and balances. You need to have risk, compliance, the data protection officer, information security, and all the likes have to be part of that governance. So you have to decide how we implement it and what comes first, number one. On the other side, you have to have a governance structure to make sure what sort of models you deploy. And make sure that the models you deploy, if they drift, that you have a model risk management in place, model drift management in place. All these things have to be properly governed. Absolutely key. So process and governance is key. And number one, and now the last piece is the people. No matter how small you are, you need skill set. You need a certain amount of skill set. That can be small teams, 1 or 2 data scientists, that's enough, but you need a certain amount of skill set. And you need to train those that are adopt your systems. Absolutely key. Because you want to have adoption. You want to have early wins. Absolutely key. Good. Another part that you need to look at is regulations. There are tons of regulations out there. You probably are aware of them. The most prominent is the EU Act. That's really an act which is binding. Many other regulations are here. Just, I would say, there are a certain amount of principles that are applying in certain countries. I'm sure they will be coming more stringent and more strict over a period of time. So we need to make sure that we have some sort of regulatory foresight. You don't want to fall into trap to implement something which you don't know whether you are allowed to deploy. So therefore, always make sure you are up to speed with the regulations. Risks. We have to talk about risks. So what are the risks that we have to look at in a banking industry? The obvious ones are, the model risk, the compliance and the legal risk. If you, for instance, would deploy a model where there is a potential that the model was being trained by data that they were not allowed to train it, the model would be injected with intellectual property rights infringements. If I now deploy a model of a provider and use the model, I could have a problem with the regulator or with legal. So therefore, we always have to make sure that the models that we deploy that are properly managed and governed. Of course, cybersecurity is an absolute key. We cannot afford, specifically in banking, that customer identifying data is going to leak out in the market, being deployed in an open model. Therefore, we have to make sure that we ring-fence these models. I'll get to that point. Operational risk. Can you imagine the moment third-party solutions providers embed AI into their applications? All of a sudden, we have different applications embedding AI, talking to each other. How do they collaborate? What is the infringement that could happen? There are operational risks which we potentially today don't even know, since we only deploy 1 or 2 models. Other risks apply. It's absolutely key. The last one that I wanted to approach on is the employee engagement. We have to make sure that we take the employees along. Absolutely key. So how do we address them? I mentioned before, governance is key. And part of a governance framework is that we deploy a policy or a general directive to govern all those elements. Is it, bias, hallucination, toxicity, poisoning? All these elements need to be actively managed. That means you need to document what those risks are, how do we address them, how do we manage them, monitor them, and how do we control them? Currently, we do that all manually. Is that possible in the future once we deploy 20, 30, 40 different models? No, it's not. The industry helps us there. There are, they call them TRISM technology, that helps us to monitor and manage those different models. It's not yet a lot out there, but it will come. So in the future, we'll have to see how we're going to manage that and how we're going to monitor these models. So policy enforcement, absolutely key and not to be underestimated. That requires a lot of additional personnel within a bank just to deploy AI. So when you think about deploying AI, it's not just about deploying some data scientists and some engineers. We also have to make sure that we deploy experience within risk, DPO, compliance, and other departments. I mentioned before the technology implementation, and I mentioned before the fact that we simply cannot afford that any critical data, customer identifying information is going out into the public. So we cannot just say, dear employees, here's the OpenAI model, we just bought a license, just connect to it and do your searches, do your queries, do your prompts. Absolutely not possible. So what we've done is we've taken the model, we took a copy of the model, and we've ring-fenced it in the cloud. We've ring-fenced it in our own cloud, and we've done this with the solution provider together. So that means we have a model which is completely unique to our own environment. We can feed it with our own data. We feed it with our own policies, we feed it with our own procedures, we feed it with our own investment management literature, so that we can fine-tune it and use it in the best possible way internally. Over a period of time, we will also be able to feed it with customer data. But we make sure nothing goes out. So it's absolutely ring-fenced. So you have to understand that there is a fundamental difference between just publicly using OpenAI or any other models that are out there versus a ring-fence model in the banking industry. And in many other corporate worlds, obviously, as well. So that is a fundamental element. And when you ask me, what does it take to implement AI in a bank? I'd say, technically, about 8 weeks. Operationally, making sure that you got senior management coverage and backup, endorsement. Making sure that compliance, operational risk management, specifically the data protection officer, and many other elements are in place, that you have a policy in place, a procedure in place that governs all of this. If you're fast, it takes about 8 months. So the technology part, very short period of time. The operational part, a very long period of time, or relatively long period of time. So that's about the equation of what you have to think about when you implement such a technology. But, and that's the cool thing about it, it helps a lot. It will enhance the productivity. So that already brings me to the key takeaways. What does it mean? Number one, establish a top-down governance. Make sure that you have senior leadership endorsement. It's easier said than done, I can tell you. And make sure that you have a clear vision in place and a clear strategy in place and clear objectives that you can measure. You want to measure success as early as possible. Number two, balance quick wins with longer-term goals. Make sure that early on in the process, you can show some wins. Because I can tell you, AI is not inexpensive. It will cost a bunch. So all the productivity gains that you gain through AI, part of it will be eaten away by the fintechs, by the hyperscalers, because they charge you quite a lot currently. Part of it will also be eaten away by the people when they realize that, oh, I've done this much, a productivity gain. I saved 40 minutes here, 20 minutes here. I can offer myself a chai latte at the coffee machine. That is also not to be underestimated, by the way. Focus on problem solutions or solving and conditions or continuous learning on AI. Every day learn, I mentioned it before. Learn fast, fail fast, and make sure you gain progress on a continuous basis. There's so many models that are coming out. The models that are out already are being improved on almost on a daily basis. Currently to a Gartner study, every 2 weeks a new model is being deployed in the market right now. That's massive. So play with the new models, exchange models if you see that one doesn't work, and fine-tune them. Absolutely key. And again, make sure that you have early wins. Keep up with AI regulations. Do the defense part. Play defense. Make sure that you don't fall into any traps in terms of regulations. And ensure that the products that you deploy really are functional. That your end customer, that your people are really gaining value out of this. And last but not least, form a small team, a SWAT team that is able to really focus on the value, on the creation of value, not just on the technology. We have to focus on the value that we generate out of AI and not be blind by just deploying, because we love it, deploy new functionality of technologies. These are the key ingredients, and if you follow that path, you will see a lot of success. And you will see that truly within banking or any other industry, you will be able to gain a momentum and achieve competitive advantage. Good. I'll open up for questions. Maybe we have to bring a microphone.
It has been my experience that sometimes I have approached the companies for AI integration purposes, and the IT department, pretty old, they are the first ones against such implementation. What about yours? So I didn't expect that. I expected them to be more embracing.
Absolutely. So I think we all, across all the industries, we're exploring this sort of in the first wave. Of course, I mentioned it before. AI is here since about 40 years. But with that killer app of generative AI, large language models being deployed, that's new for everybody. It's here for 2 years, and everyone is exploring it. So we're exploring it in the IT departments who have to overcome obstacles. I can tell you from our own experience, I'm dealing with obstacles every single day. It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle with operational risk management, who doesn't seem to understand the issues that we have or the aim that we have. We want to block things. Information security comes with tons of questions. How can we protect this and that? It's a constant uphill battle that you have to go. It's not an easy walk, I can tell you. It's a brutal walk, and you have to fight every day that you can gain the advantages that the technology, the tool is offering. And therefore, is it IT? Is it risk management? Is it compliance? For everyone, it's new. So that's what I'm saying. You have to take everyone along. You have to create fusion teams that all believe in the same vision and make them a powerful team and make sure that everyone believes that somehow we can gain that momentum and we can achieve that. But at the beginning, everyone says, are you crazy? We're not going to do that within the banking industry. When I first approached our DPO, data protection officer in the bank, and said what I want to do, he was, I say, forget it. Never ever in this bank. Be persistent and do small, very small steps and take everyone along. It takes a lot of education that you bring the people along with you.
Thank you for that answer. And if I can ask a second one. I talked to a banker, and he's running a pilot project, but he told me in our industry, it's black and white. There is no other option. So do you expect any regulation explicit for banks in Switzerland sometime soon?
There are regulations out there, specifically for an international bank as us. We can not only rely on FINMA, but FINMA has they don't have an act out there. FINMA has some principles out there which you have to obey to, which are relatively open. So we can deal with it right now, which is good. The AI Act, however, is very strict, very fundamental. It tells you exactly what you're allowed to do and what not. And I believe that many other jurisdictions and sovereignties will come out with more stringent AI acts like EU. So we'll have to watch the space continuously and adapt to it.
Thank you.
What is the degree of a penetration of AI in banking operation? So I mean everyday operation. And do you already have feedback of employee and clients? Thank you.
Very good question. So the penetration, we measure it with the rate of the adoption, which it is not that easy. It seems, when you start to deploy it, and again, we started small. Currently, we only have, out of 3,000 employees, we have roughly 200 that are using it. We wanted to, start small and make it, make a pilot case proof of value. Those 200 are giving us feedback on a daily basis. Within the tool itself, they can do thumbs up, thumbs down, and then do a remark, and we take that and we constantly refine the models and adjust the systems landscape. We have daily calls where we take the feedback. So those are the ones that really wanted to adopt early. But the rest, we probably have to convince. But we will be able to convince with specific stories and specific use cases and specific success stories. So I can give you one example. What we have is what we call a fund commentary. Within banking, you have funds that are being managed actively, and we have so-called fund managers who, on a monthly basis, they have to provide a commentary on that fund. So this today is a manual craft. It takes them 3 hours per fund manager. It's the obvious case with ChatGPT. It reduces the amount for that commentary to 1 hour. So they're totally happy with the tool. And I could give you 5 more use cases like this. So we put them on stage and we make them to tell the story within the bank, and through that, we will gain momentum. That's how we do it.
Hi, first of all, thank you very much for sharing your experience. And as you mentioned before, it's a very hard journey. I mean, also for you and your role inside your organization. So in a personal way, during this journey, where did you find the best moment when you achieved something that means for you a lot during this journey?
I'd say, celebrate small successes with the team. It's a long journey, and the journey never ends. We all know that. The journey never ends. And therefore, make sure that you reflect what you have achieved. Look back just a year and see where you've been standing a year ago with the team and where you're standing now. When you look forward, you think, oh my goodness, this hill is still so steep. How are we in any way going to achieve that? But when you then look back and make sure that you understand the small steps that you've done, how far you've come, then you can celebrate those small steps. The most important part of a journey is to start and to continuously walk. Do it in small steps, but never ever stop. And that creates small success stories, and that's how we do it. Be persistent.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you as well very much. Can you please tell us which KPIs, which main KPIs did you improve? What have you done with the improvements? And did you need to release some people because of these improvements?
Oh, very good question. Thank you for this question. Number one, we have different KPIs, and we learn here as well. Don't start too big with KPIs. So KPI number one is time save, because we're still in the bucket of employee productivity. We're not yet in the bucket of product innovation. And with employee productivity, the key KPI is time save. I just mentioned one of the success stories with the fund commentary from 3 hours to 1 hour per fund manager. That's a pretty nice story. And there's some other stories as well. So key KPI number one, next to adoption, of course, you start with the adoption. Key KPI number one is increase of the population that leverages the tool. That's the fundamental KPI that you first start to measure. Then it's a time save. And of course, we also have some qualitative KPIs on the tool itself. So we ask the people, how does it help you in your daily work? How much time do you save? How much productivity gains do you have here and that? We start with relatively open-ended questions. And with that will help us to fine-tune the KPIs of the future. The people, of course, the people satisfaction. Oh yes, and the people question, sorry. Very good, thank you. I always say the people don't have to be afraid that they will be exchanged or eliminated, if I may say, by AI. Why is that? AI is not yet what it stands for, artificial intelligence. We all know AI has no cognitive capability at all. It's just a probability tool based on large amount of data. So it helps you to do your tasks, your job better by simplifying or doing repetitive tasks faster. But it doesn't eliminate entire jobs. So my saying is, don't be afraid of AI, but as a human being, as an employee, be afraid that you are being exchanged by a person who uses AI in the best possible manner. I think that's the key differentiating value.
I wanted to ask how many use cases were introduced in the bank? And the first one probably is, like you were explaining, 8 months and just 8 weeks of theoretically introduction time. The second one, the third one, I imagine it was faster because you had the lesson learned.
Yes. So number one, we have today, as of today, 35 use cases that we've collected and documented and know that there are on the bench to be implemented. So far implemented, we have 5 use cases across the board, and we started with the easy ones first, and we're currently working on another 5 that are more in the more mature part, harder to catch. There, we need to combine machine learning models with LLM models, a combination. And to make it even harder, it also combines critical data, meaning CID data. So There is
So at the beginning, less risk, and then
so the
advancing.
moment, exactly, the moment you go into risk and compliance, specifically compliance, that's where the juicy part comes.
But the first time that you go to them and then you have answer, probably it makes your life easier for the second one and the next one, because you say, but we already decided that, probably.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it's accelerating. It's not linear, but it's in a certain way curve growing up this way.
Wonderful way. I call it the hockey stick, or we all call it the hockey stick effect. Once you reach that inflection point, I'm pretty sure we reach that hockey stick
mature,
moment. Yeah.
Getting mature, and then
we're not yet there, but I'm
course.
sure, I'm totally sure we will get there. The question is when.
But you are not so far, because as I see that from all this experience, you're going very fast and you are ahead of the others.
Yes, I believe so. We're pretty good amongst our peers, but the competition is stiff and everyone is trying to catch up, but we're keeping up the pace.
Is it possible? Probably not, but to see the list of cases?
No.
But I tried.
I gave you one.
Yes, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for having me, and have a good rest of the afternoon. I believe it's now break, correct?